Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning. Good morning. How are you? How is everybody? Monday morning weekly word. We are live today, and I'm so excited that I was able to actually be here live with you. I know last week this is the Monday recording, but I am here. So let's start with prayer. Lord, thank you so much for another week and another day, another moment with you. Lord, thank you so much for your words. Thank you so much for your blessings. Thank you so much for hearing us when we pray. I know sometimes our prayers may not be answered right away, but we know that you are with us every single day. And everything that you have for us is meant for good and not for harm. And Lord, we're just so grateful. And as we step into another week, Lord, that I ask you to just bless those who are watching us, bless those who are on here, and bless all those that believe in you and those that have not heard of you yet. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Woo! I'm so excited to be here with you guys today again. And this week we are in 1 Samuel. And 1 Samuel is pretty long. There is a lot of things that we are setting the stage for. And last week we were in Ruth, and Ruth was really a fresh reminder, right, of the faithfulness that takes place when you have faith in the Lord and you really lead with Him at the front and follow that, and just have a good heart, right? And as we step into Samuel, there's a lot that we're setting the tone for in 1 Samuel going into 2 Samuel, and it's going to be a lot. So I am not going to necessarily read every single thing, but I definitely want to highlight some things for you so that you can either go back and read it on your own this week thoroughly so that you can get the full context of things. But as we are in 1 Samuel, it's Israel is, they've been established. We've gone through that, and now they're asking for a king, someone who's going to lead them. And God gives them Saul. And this is where, Saul comes into play. And the thing is a king, he looked the part, right? He looked the part. He was tall, he was impressive, he was strong. But the thing with it is that he lacked obedience and integrity. And as we know with the story, when it comes to this, God sends Samuel to anoint David. And David is the shepherd boy. He's overlooked, he's unseen. It's really unexpected, right? But this really teaches us something, and that God's selection is different from ours. And I think that is a good place to begin, because his selection is so much different, right? And as many times I'm sure you've heard, like, he doesn't qualify the called, he calls the qualified. Like, I might have said that wrong, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's sometimes you may not feel qualified for whatever it is that you are doing or whatever it is that you're trying to succeed at, but God has called you to that. So you may not feel that way, but God knows your heart. He knows your character. He knows that you're in alignment with it. And one thing that I want to point out before we get into some of the chapters here in 1 Samuel is that he's really not impressed with like titles, a talent that you have, a visibility that you have, or these external successes. But what he truly examines is going to be what your motives are, like your integrity, your character, and your alignment with him. And like I said before, I kind of butchered it, but it says, when you qualify you before people, it's not what qualifies you before God. And I feel that there's so many times that we sometimes really go off the opinions that people say about us. And I'm so sorry about my dog. He won't stop barking. They're playing this morning. So we care a lot about people's opinions, I feel sometimes. And it's like, oh, well, what's this person going to think about me? And that's not the opinion that matters. So in 1 Samuel chapter 1, it talks about the lineage, right? And I do believe that this is always really important inside the Bible because it shows us where things come from, right? So there's Elkanah and his family, and it talks, they were living in Ramon, and it talks about the line, okay? The son of, and so Elkanah had 2 wives, and this is Hannah and Peninnah. And so this is, Hannah is an important part inside of 1 Samuel. So Peninnah had 2 sons, but Hannah didn't. And their husband would travel to worship and sacrifice to the Lord. And in this, it says heaven's armies at the tabernacle. And in this, each time Hannah was so upset because all she wanted was a child. All she wanted was a child, and she was always so upset because Peninnah, the other wife, would actually taunt Hannah because she didn't have children. And it's an interesting dynamic here. It says here, so Peninnah would taunt Hannah and make fun of her because the Lord had kept her from having children. Year after year, it was the same. Peninnah would taunt Hannah as they went to the tabernacle. Each time, Hannah would be reduced to tears and would not even eat. Why are you crying, Hannah? Elkanah would ask. Why aren't you eating? Why be downhearted just because you have no children? You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons? Once after a sacrificial meal at the Shiloh, Hannah got up and went to pray. Eli the priest was sitting at his customary place beside the entrance of the tabernacle. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. And she made this vow, O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for an entire lifetime as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord. His hair will never be cut. And as she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her, seeing her lips moving but hearing no sound. He thought she had been drinking. Must you come here drunk? He demanded. Throw away your wine. Oh, no, sir, she replied. I haven't been drinking wine or anything stronger, but I am very discouraged, and I was pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think I am a wicked woman, for I have been praying out of anguish and sorrow. In that case, Eli said, go in peace. May the God of Israel grant the request you have been asked of him. Oh, thank you, sir, she exclaimed. Then she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad. The entire family got up the next morning and went to worship the Lord once more. Then when they returned home to Ramah, when Eglah slept with Hannah, the Lord remembered her plea, and in due time she gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, I asked the Lord for him. The next year, Eglah and his family went on to their annual trip to offer a sacrifice to the Lord and keep his vow, but Hannah did not go. She told her husband, wait until the boy is weaned. Then I will take him to the tabernacle and leave him there with the Lord permanently. Whatever you think is best, Eglah agreed. Stay here for now, and may the Lord help you keep your promise. So she stayed home and nursed the boy until he was weaned. When the child was weaned, Hannah took him to the tabernacle in the Shiloh. They brought along a 3-year-old bull for the sacrifice of the basket and the flour and some wine. After sacrificing the bull, they brought the boy to Eli. Sir, do you remember me? Hannah asked. I am the woman who stood here several years ago praying to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he was granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life. And they worship the Lord there. This is a really important part because it shows that she wanted something so bad, and I believe that each and every one of us from one time or another want something so badly, and we may or may not be answered in that time. But Hannah's prayer was answered with her son, and she did the right thing and dedicated him to the Lord. Now, in this chapter, Hannah has a prayer of praise that she says. as they're praying. So, I mean, this is a yearly thing, right? We learned in the very beginning, like how you pray and what you sacrifice and what you give to the Lord. This was something that, was very, it was a ritual. It was things that you needed to be done because this is, what was told to them by the commandments. Like, this is what you have to do, to please the Lord. And as we get into the next section, it talks about, then Ikla returned home to Ramon without Samuel, and the boy served the Lord by assisting Eli the priest. So they left the boy there, with the high priest, and that, did exactly what Hannah, if you gave me a son, this is exactly what I'm going to do. So Eli is another important part in this. So Eli had wicked sons, is what it says. And they were scoundrels who had no respect for the Lord or for their duties as priests. Whenever anyone offered a sacrifice, Eli's sons would send a servant with a three-pronged fork. While the meat of the sacrificed animal was still boiling, the servant would stick the fork into the pot and demand that whatever it brought up given to Eli's sons. All Israelites who came to worship at Shiloh were treated this way. Sometimes the servants would even come before the animal's fat had been burned at the altar. He would demand raw meat before it had been boiled so that it could be used for roasting. The man offered the sacrificing might reply, take as much as you want, but the fat must be burned first. Then the servant would demand, no, give it to me now, or I'll take it by force. So the sin of these young men was very serious in the Lord's sight, for they treated the Lord's offerings with contempt. But Samuel thought though he was only a boy, he served the Lord. He wore a linen garment like that of a priest, and each year his mother made a small coat for him and brought it to him when she came with her husband for the sacrifice. Before they returned home, Eli would bless Eklah and his wife and say, may the Lord give you other children to take place of this son that she gave to the Lord. And the Lord blessed Hannah, and she conceived and gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. Then Eli was very old, and he was aware that his sons, what they were doing to the people of Israel. He knew, for instance, that his sons were seducing young women who assisted at the entrance of the tabernacle. Eli said to them, I have been hearing reports from all the people about you and about the wicked things you are doing. Why do you keep sinning? You must stop, my sons. The reports I hear among the Lord's people are not good. If someone sins against another person, God can mediate for the guilty party. But if someone sins against the Lord, who cannot intercede? But Eli's sons wouldn't listen to their father, for the Lord has already planning to put them to death. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel grew taller and grew in favor with the Lord and with the people. Then there was a warning to Eli's family because of the sons, and he started to, God started to shift a lot of different things. And then in chapter 3, 1 Samuel, the Lord speaks to Samuel. And this is an important text that I was reading earlier. And it says, meanwhile, the boy Samuel served the Lord by assisting Eli. Now in those days, messages from the Lord were very rare, and visions were quite uncommon. One night, Eli, who was almost blind now, had gone to bed, and the lamp of God had not yet gone out. And Samuel was sleeping in the tabernacle near the ark of God. Suddenly the Lord called out, Samuel. Yes, Samuel replied. What is it? He got up and ran to Eli. Here I am. Did you call me? I didn't call you, Eli replied. Go back to bed. So he did. Then the Lord called out again, Samuel. Again, Samuel got up and went to Eli. Here I am. Did you call me? I didn't call you, my son. Eli said, go back to bed. Samuel did not yet know the Lord because he had never had a message from the Lord before. So the Lord called a third time, and once more Samuel got up and went to Eli. Here I am. Did you call me? Then Eli realized it was the Lord who was calling the boy. So he said to Samuel, go and lie down again, and if someone calls you again, say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. So Samuel went back to bed. And the Lord came and called as before, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel replied, speak, your servant is listening. Then the Lord said to Samuel, I am about to do a shocking thing in Israel. I'm going to carry out all my threats against Eli and his family from beginning to end. I have warned him that judgment is coming upon his family forever, because his sons are blaspheming God, and he hasn't been disciplining them. So I have vowed that all the sins of Eli and his sons will never be forgiven by sacrifices or offerings. Samuel stayed in bed until morning, and then he got up and opened the doors of the tabernacle as usual. He was afraid to tell Eli what the Lord had said to him, but Eli came out to him and said, "Samuel, my son." "Here I am," Samuel replied. "What did the Lord say to you? Tell me everything, and may God strike you and even kill you if you hide anything from me." So Samuel told Eli everything, and he didn't hold back. "It is the Lord's will," Eli replied. "Let him do what he thinks is best." As Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him, and everything Samuel said proved to be reliable. And all Israel, from Dan to the north to the Beersheba and in the south, knew that Samuel was confirming as a prophet of the Lord. The Lord continued to appear at Shiloh and give messages to Samuel there at the tabernacle. And Samuel's words went out to all the people of Israel. So it's such an important turn of events of what's starting to happen. And it all comes down to the plea of his mother. And again, you see this pattern, right, inside the Bible of these people that are chosen out of the craziest of circumstances. And it's not always what you think, right? It's not someone who's been passed down from this line to this line to this line. It's always in between. And I find it so interesting that it's never what you think. And again, as we continue in, there is the Philistines capture the ark. So now it's, all of the threats that God had said because of the sins of Eli and his family are starting to happen. So that's what's going on in chapter 4 of 1 Samuel. And then Eli, and there's a war, and Eli dies. And as we go into chapter 6, the Philistines return the ark. And I mean, this is going on for months, right? This is a long thing that's starting to happen. And so as this is happening, Samuel is getting older, and he's in the middle of this. So it says here in 7 that Samuel leads Israel to victory. And Samuel said to all the people, "If you want to return to the Lord with all your hearts, get rid of your foreign gods and your images. Turn your hearts to the Lord and obey him alone. Then he will rescue you from the Philistines." So the Israelites got out of their images of Baal and Ashtoreth and worshipped only the Lord. So again, we're starting to see it's when things are happening, people are starting to worship other gods, and it's like people got to reel them back in again. And Samuel is the one that is doing that. So as we get to 8, this is where Israel is demanding that they have a king. So as Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons to be judged over Israel, Joel and Abijah. His oldest sons held in court in Beersheba, but they were not like their father, for they were greedy for money. They accepted bribes and perverted justice. Finally, all the elders of Israel met at Ramah to discuss the matter with Samuel. "Look," they told him, "you are now old, and your sons are not like you. Give us a king to judge us all like all the other nations have." Samuel was displeased with their request and went to the Lord for guidance. "Do everything they say to you," the Lord replied, "for they are rejecting me, not you. They don't want me to be their king any longer. Ever since I brought them from Egypt, they have continually abandoned me and followed other gods, and now they are giving you the same treatment. Do as they ask, but solemnly warn them about the way the king that will reign over them." I definitely feel a certain way reading that, and this is something that I want to point out when it comes to 1 Samuel. Right? And it, I've told you all the things. It's like, okay, Israel wanted a king, and they got the king that they got. But I think what's really important is do everything they say to you, the Lord replied, "for they are rejecting me and not you. They don't want me to be their king any longer, ever since I brought them from Egypt." Again, this story doesn't end, right? as we've been reading over these last 15 weeks, it's about the graciousness of our Lord and what he is doing for his people. And people are taking advantage of that and they don't care. And he's saying it right here again. Ever since I brought them from Egypt, and they have continually abandoned me and followed other gods. And they're giving you the same treatment. Do as they ask, but warn them that the way a king will reign over them. Like, okay, you don't want to follow my rules, and you don't want to follow me, and you want to continuously abandon me, even though I've provided things for you and you've never been without. It really starts to show you I hate to say this, but the heart of the Lord. And it's like, I'm doing all these things, but it's never enough. And how many times have maybe you felt that way? Well, I'm doing all these things for my family and it's just never enough. People have been doing this to God since the beginning of time. They continuously don't listen to me. They continually abandon me. They're just like, they want other people to reign over them. And it's like, do you see, like, it's really showing the character of, who God truly is. Yes, he is all things. Okay. He's not, just a man. He's not it, all of these things. But this just shows right here that people see things and they want to be like all the other nations, and they want a king that's going to rule over them, that's going to be physically there, because they can't just live on faith. They have to see things. They can't just rely on the faith, because clearly God's messages weren't that availably open. I mean, the Spirit of the Lord, the Holy Spirit, wasn't completely available to us yet, and to these people in this time. And they choose someone on appearance and status and, what he had done. So God's like, all right, cool. Like, here you go. This is what you wanted, right? This is what you wanted based on what everybody else is doing. It's kind of like that saying, like, are you going to, if someone jumps off a bridge, are you going to follow them? Like, this is exactly what's happening. Like, okay, if this is what you want, just like the other nations, even though I've led you out of Egypt and all your people, and yes, years have gone by and things have changed and happened as we read. It just shows that when people prioritize appearance, they miss the standard of God. They miss it. And I know we do this to this day. It says that Samuel warns against the kingdom. So Samuel passed on the Lord's warning to the people who were asking him for a king. This is how a king will reign over you, he said. The king will draft your sons and assign them to his chariots and his charioteers, making them run before their chariots. Some will be generals and captains in his army. Some will be forced to plow his fields and harvest his crops, and some will make his weapons and chariot equipment. The king will take your daughters from you and force them to cook and bake and make perfumes. He will take away the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his own officials. He will take 1/10 of your grain and your grape harvest and distribute it among his officers and attendants, and he will take your male and female slaves and demand the finest of your cattle and donkeys for his own use. He will demand 1/10 of your flocks, and you will be his slaves. When that day comes, you will beg for relief from this king, and you are demanding, but then the Lord will not help you. But the people refused to listen to Samuel's warning. Even so, we still want a king, they said. We want to be like the nations around us. Our king will judge us and lead us on to battle. So Samuel repeated to the Lord what the people had said, and the Lord replied, do as they say and give them a king. Then Samuel agreed and sent the people home. So now in chapter 9 is when Saul becomes king. There was a wealthy, influential man named Kish from the tribe of Benjamin. He was the son of Abiel, son of Zorah, son of Bechorath, and son of Aphrah, of the tribe of Benjamin. His son Saul was the most handsome man in Israel, head and shoulders taller than anyone else in the land. One day Kish's donkey strayed away, and he told Saul, "Take a servant with you and go for the donkeys." So Saul took one of the servants and traveled through the hill country of Ephraim and the land of Shalesh and Shalem area, and in the entire land of Benjamin, and they couldn't find the donkeys. Finally, they entered the reign of Zeph and Zuph, and Saul said to his servant, "Let's go home. By now my father will be more worried about us than about the donkeys." But the servant said, "I've just thought of something. There is a man of God who lives here in this town. He is held in high honor by all the people because everything he says comes true. Let's go find him. Perhaps he can tell us which way to go." "But we don't have anything to offer him," Saul replied. "Even our food is gone, and we don't have a thing to give him." "Well," the servant said, "I have one small silver piece. We can at least offer it to the man of God and see what happens." In those days, if people wanted a message from God, they would say, "Let's go and ask the seer," for prophets used to be called seers. "All right," Saul agreed. "Let's try it." So they started into the town where the man of God lived. As they were climbing the hill in the town, they met some young women coming out to draw water. So Saul and his servant asked, "Is the seer here today?" "Yes," they replied, "right on this road. He is at the town gates. He just arrived to take part in a public sacrifice up on the place of worship. Hurry and catch him before he goes up to eat. The guests won't begin eating until he arrives to bless the food." So they entered the town, and as they passed through the gates, Samuel was coming out towards them to go up to the place of worship. Now the Lord had told Samuel the previous day, "About this time tomorrow I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him to be the leader of my people Israel. He will rescue them from the Philistines, and I have looked down on my people in mercy and have heard their cry." When Samuel saw Saul and the Lord, "That's the man I told you about. He will rule my people." Just then Saul approached Samuel at the gateway and asked, "Can you please tell me where the seer's house is?" "I am the seer," Samuel replied. "Go up to the place of worship ahead of me. We will eat there together, and in the morning I will tell you about what you want to know and send you on your way. And don't worry about those donkeys. They were lost 3 days ago, for they have been found. I am here to tell you that you and your family are the focus of all Israel's hopes." Saul replied, "But I'm only from the tribe of Benjamin, the smallest tribe in Israel, and my family is the least important of all the families of that tribe. Why are you talking to me like this?" Then Samuel brought Saul and his servant to the hall and placed him at the head of the table, honoring them above the 30 special guests. Samuel then instructed the cook to bring Saul the finest cut of meat, the piece that had been set aside for the guest of honor. So the cook brought in the meat, and I placed it before Saul. "Go ahead and eat it," Samuel said. I was saving it for you even before I invited these others." So Saul ate with Samuel that day. When they looked down from the place of worship and returned to town, Samuel took Saul up to the roof of the house and prepared a bed for him there. At daybreak the next morning, Samuel called to Saul, "Get up. It's time you were on your way." So Saul got ready, and he and Samuel left the house together. When they reached the edge of town, Samuel told Saul to send his servant on ahead. After the servant was gone, Samuel said, "Stay here, for I have received a special message for you from God." Samuel took a flask of olive oil and poured it over Saul's head. He kissed Saul and said, "I am doing this because the Lord has appointed me for you to be the ruler over Israel, his special possession. When you leave me today, you will see 2 men beside Rachel's tomb at Zelah on the border of Benjamin. They will tell you that the donkeys have been found and that your father has stopped worrying about them and is now worried about you. He is asking, 'Have you seen my son?' When you get to the Oak of Tabor, you will see 3 men coming towards you who are on their way to worship God at Bethel. One will be bringing 3 young goats, another will have 3 loaves of bread, and the third will be carrying wineskin full of wine. They will greet you and offer you 2 of the loaves, which you are to accept. When you arrive at Gibeath of God, where the garrison of the Philistines is located, you will meet a band of prophets coming down from the place of worship. They will be playing a harp and a tambourine, a flute, and a lyre, and they will be prophesying. At that time, the Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully upon you, and you will be prophesying with them. You will be changed into a different person. After these signs take place, do what must be done, for God is with you. Then go to Gilgath ahead of me. I will join you to sacrifice the burnt offerings and peace offerings. You must wait 7 days until I have arrived and give you further instructions." It's getting a little crazy, right? So God is giving the people what they're asking for through Samuel to Saul. And some of these pieces, I really, I know a lot of people look at these bigger pictures, but, as someone who, I guess I would say that someone who likes to look at history and watch different types of TV shows that have to, whether it's like Scottish things or English things. And it's interesting to know that some of the things that, people talk about and the words they say, like for me in chapter 9, it's, they call it the seer. So instead of like, a prophet or, someone who has this relationship with God or high priest, they call him a seer, someone that has this relationship. And I just find it really interesting. And, it's regardless of, as we're going to find out when it comes to Saul, this is what was chosen. It's like, okay, well, we'll choose. And I personally, for me, I think that, Saul doesn't seem that bad at the moment, right? Like, he doesn't seem like that bad of a guy, as you're kind of reading it. You don't really, it's not really too much going on. He was kind of doing what he was supposed to for his dad and, looking for these donkeys and stuff. And yeah, so as we get more into chapter 10, Samuel's signs are fulfilled, and Saul is acclaimed king. And, it, and then of course, Saul then defeats the Amorites and Samuel's farewell address. So Saul defeats the Amorites in chapter 11. And then when we get to chapter 12, Samuel addressed all of Israel and says, I have done for you and asked and given you a king. Your king is now your leader. I stand here before you, an old gray harried man, and my sons serve you. I have served as your leader for the time I was a boy to this very day. Now testify against me in the presence of the Lord and before his anointed one. Whose ox or donkey have I stolen? Have I ever cheated any of you? Have I ever oppressed you? Have I ever taken a bribe and perverted justice? Tell me, and I will make it right, whatever I have done wrong. No, they replied, you have never cheated or oppressed us, and you have never taken even a single bribe. The Lord and his anointed one are my witnesses today, Samuel declared, that my hands are clean. Yes, he is a witness, they replied. It was the Lord who appointed Moses and Aaron, Samuel continued. He brought your ancestors out of the land of Egypt. Now stand here quietly before the Lord as I remind you all of the great things the Lord has done for you and your ancestors. When the Israelites were in Egypt and cried out to the Lord, he sent Moses and Aaron to rescue you from Egypt and bring them into this land. But the people soon forgot about the Lord their God. So he handed them over to Sisera, the commander of Hazor's army, and also to the Philistines and to the king of Moab who fought against them. Then they cried out to the Lord again and confessed, we have sinned by turning away from the Lord and worshiping the images of Baal and Ashereth. But we will worship you and you alone if you'll rescue us from our enemies. Then the Lord sent Gideon, Beden, Jebeth, and Samuel to save you, and you lived in safety. But when you were afraid of Nahash, the king of Ammon, you came to me and said you wanted a king to reign over you, even though your Lord your God was already your king. All right, here is your king you have chosen. You have asked for him, and the Lord has granted your request. Now, if you fear and worship the Lord and listen to his voice, and if you do not rebel against the Lord's commands, then both you and your king will show that you recognize the Lord as your God. But if you rebel against the Lord's commands and refuse to listen to him, then his hand will be heavy upon you as it is upon your ancestors. Now stand here and see the great thing the Lord is about to do. You know that it does not rain at this time of the year during the wheat harvest. I will ask the Lord to send thunder and rain today. Then you will realize how wicked you have been in asking the Lord for a king. So Samuel called to the Lord, and the Lord sent thunder and rain that day, and all the people were terrified of the Lord and of Samuel. Pray to the Lord your God for us, or we will die, they all said to Samuel. For now you have added to our sins by asking for a king. Don't be afraid, Samuel reassured them. You have certainly done wrong, but make sure now that you worship the Lord with all your heart, and don't turn your back on him. Don't go back worshiping worthless idols that cannot help or rescue you. They are totally useless. The Lord will not abandon his people, because that would dishonor his great name. For it has pleased the Lord to make you his very own people. As for me, I will certainly not sin against the Lord by ending my prayers for you. I will continue to teach you what is good and right. But be sure to fear the Lord and faithfully serve him. Think of all the wonderful things he has done for you. But if you continue to sin, you and your king will be swept away. It sounds fairly similar to what was going on with Moses and Joshua, if I do say so myself. Sounds really similar. So if we back up just a little bit, 1 Samuel 9 through 15, because we're going to back up and then jump up a little bit. You know, Saul looks like that leader, right? Externally. And that's what they were asking for. They wanted to be like everybody else and have this leader. But in reality, Saul really struggled. He was insecure. He feared people, disobedient. And the thing is that he had lost favor with God. Not because his ability to do this, that, and the other thing, but because of his obedience, right? And that's the whole thing. Is I think it's important to understand that position cannot sustain what a character cannot support. That's just the reality of it. And as we continue, there's a section in here that talks about Saul's foolish oath. And again, you know, these conversations and these things that are going on really start to take a hold as we get into David and where David comes from. And the Lord rejects Saul in chapter 15. And Samuel is still around. So Samuel isn't gone, but he is old, right? And he has served the Lord his whole life. And in this section, it's 1 Samuel chapter 15, 10. It says, Then the Lord said to Samuel, I am sorry that I ever made Saul king, for he has not been loyal to me and has refused to obey my command. Samuel was so deeply moved when he heard this that he cried out to the Lord all night. Early next morning, Samuel went to find Saul. Someone told him, Saul went to the town of Carmel to set up a monument to himself. Then he went on to Gilgal. When Samuel finally found him, Saul greeted him cheerfully. May the Lord bless you, he said. I have carried out the Lord's command. Then what is all this bleating of sheep and goats and lowering of cattle I hear? Samuel demanded. It's true that the army spared the best of the sheep, goats, and cattle, Saul admitted. But they're going to sacrifice them to the Lord your God. We have destroyed everything else. Then Samuel said to Saul, Stop. Listen to what the Lord told me last night. What did he tell you? Saul asked. And Samuel told him, Although you may think little of yourself, are you not the leader of the tribes of Israel? The Lord has anointed you king of Israel, and the Lord sent you on a mission and told you, Go and completely destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, until they are all dead. Why haven't you obeyed the Lord? Why did you rush for the plunder and do what was evil in the Lord's sight? But I did obey the Lord, Saul insisted. I carried out the mission he gave me. I brought back King Agag, but I destroyed everything else. Then my troops brought in the best of the sheep, goats, and cattle and plunder to sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal. But Samuel replied, What is more pleasing to the Lord, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, or your obedience to his voice? Listen, obedience is better than sacrifice, and submission is better than offering the fat of rams. Rebellion is as sinful as witchcraft, and stubbornness as bad as worshiping idols. So because you have rejected the command of the Lord, he has rejected you as a king. Then Saul admitted to Samuel, Yes, I have sinned. I have disobeyed your instructions and the Lord's command, for I was afraid of the people and what they would demand. But now please forgive me for my sin and come back with me so I may worship the Lord. Samuel replied, I will not go back with you. Since you have rejected the Lord's command, he has rejected you as the king of Israel. As Samuel turned to go, Saul tried to hold him and tore the hem of his robe. And Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to someone else, one who is better than you. And he who is the glory of Israel will not lie, nor will change his mind, for he is not human, and he should change his mind. Then Saul pleaded again, I know I have sinned, but please at least honor me before the elders of the people and before Israel by coming back with me so I may worship the Lord your God. So Samuel finally agreed and went back with him, and Saul worshiped the Lord. Then Samuel said, bring King Agag to me. Agag arrived full of hope, for he thought, surely the worst is over and I have been spared. But Samuel said, as your sword has killed the sons of many mothers, now your mother will be childless. And Samuel cut Agag to pieces before the Lord at Gilgal. Then Samuel went home to Ramah, and Saul returned to his house at Gibeath of Saul. Samuel never went to meet with Saul again, but he mourned constantly for him, and the Lord was sorry he had ever made Saul king of Israel. Now it's starting to get good. 16. 1 Samuel chapter 16. This is where David comes into play. And everyone's heard of David and Goliath and the story, but this is what it was leading up to it. All of these other things that are taking place and that are going on, right? And so now, Saul had already, he was done. God was like, you're done. And he told Samuel to tell me, he's like, you're done. It's already been transferred over. And even though he's still reigning, right, it's done. And David, he's overlooked. He's young. He's not really seen. And God truly sees David and chooses David. And it's important because God chooses based on who you are, not how you look. And I think in our world now, so many people base things on how somebody looks. And this is important because Saul was handsome and tall and he looked the part of a king. Right? I think when you watch movies and you read books and they describe kings as, these strong and, just very good looking. And David was not that. He was not that. He wasn't. And it's important. It says, now the Lord said to Samuel, you have mourned long enough for Saul. I have rejected him as king of Israel. So fill your flask with olive oil and go to Bethlehem. Notice what that says. Fill your flask with olive oil and go to Bethlehem. It's these tiny little nuggets. Find a man named Jesse who lives there, for I have selected one of his sons to be my king. But Samuel said, how can I do that? If Saul hears about it, he'll kill me. Take a heifer with you, the Lord replied, and say that you have come to make a sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you which of his sons to anoint. So Samuel did as the Lord instructed, and when he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town came trembling to meet him. What's wrong? They asked. Do you come in peace? Yes, Samuel replied. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Purify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. Then Samuel performed the purification rite for Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice too. When they arrived, Samuel took one look at Eliab and thought, surely this is the Lord's anointed. But the Lord said to Samuel, don't judge by his appearance or height, for I have rejected him. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. What was I just saying? It's like the Lord looks at the heart. Then Jesse told his son Abinadab Abinadab to step forward and walk in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, "This is not the one the Lord has chosen." Next, Jesse summoned Shimnah. But Samuel said, "Neither is this one the one the Lord has chosen." In the same way, all 7 of Jesse's sons were presented to Samuel. But Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen any of these." Then Samuel asked, "Are these all the sons that you have?" "There is still the youngest," Jesse replied, "but he's out in the fields watching the sheep and the goats." "Send for him at once," Samuel said. "We will not sit down to eat till he arrives." So Jesse sent for him. He was dark and handsome, with beautiful eyes. And the Lord said, "This is the one, anoint him." So as David stood there among his brothers, Samuel took the flask of olive oil he had brought and anointed David with the oil. And the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David from that day. Then Samuel returned to Ramah. Now that the Spirit of the Lord had left Saul, and the Lord sent a tormenting spirit that filled him with depression and fear. Some of Saul's servants said to him, "A tormenting spirit from God is troubling you. Let us find a good musician to play the harp whenever your tormented spirit troubles you. He will play soothing music, and you will be soon well again." "All right," Saul said, "find me someone who plays well and bring him here." One of the servants said to Saul, "One of Jesse's sons from Bethlehem is a talented harp player. Not only that, he is a brave warrior, a man of war, and he has good judgment. He's also a fine-looking man, and the Lord is with him." So Saul sent messengers to Jesse, "Send me your son David, the shepherd." Jesse responded by sending David to Saul, along with the young goat, a donkey loaded with bread, and a wineskin full of wine. So David went to Saul and began serving him. Saul loved David very much, and David became his armor bearer. Then Saul sent word to Jesse, asking, "Please let David remain in my service, for I am pleased with him." And whenever the tormenting spirit from God troubled Saul, David would play the harp. Then Saul would feel better, and the tormenting spirit would go away. Things are getting interesting. So Saul's done, and he's just getting tormented, and sends for David. He knows that, God anointed him, but Saul didn't know that David was the one yet, right? That God was chosen to take Saul's place. Okay. So in 17, it says Goliath challenges the Israelites. So this is where Goliath comes into place, right? The Philistines now mustered their army for battle and camped between Succoth in Judah and Azekah, I'm butchering this, and Ascalon at Ephes Dammim. Saul countered by gathering his Israel troops near the valley of Elah. So the Philistines and Israelites faced each other on opposite hills with the valley between them. Then Goliath, a Philistine champion from Gath, came out of the Philistine ranks to face the forces of Israel. He was over 9 feet tall. He wore a bronze helmet, and his bronze coat of mail weighed 125 pounds. He also wore bronze leg armor, and he carried a bronze javelin on his shoulder. The shaft of his spear was as heavy and thick as a weaver's beam, tipped with an iron spearhead that weighed about 15 pounds. His armor bearer walked ahead of him carrying a shield. Goliath stood and shouted a taunt across to the Israelites. "Why are you all coming out to fight?" he called. "I am the Philistine champion, but you are only servants of Saul. Choose one man to come down here and fight me. If he kills me, then we will be your slaves. But if I kill him, you will be our slaves. I defy the armies of Israel today. Send a man who will fight me." When Saul and the Israelites heard this, they were terrified and deeply shaken. So again, when it comes to everything that we know, when it comes to our history, giants, it wasn't uncommon in these different tribes and really the different nations of the world and how they really came to be. This guy was 9 feet tall, and David is just a regular sized man. And this is what's going on. So Jesse is now going to send David to Saul's camp. And I'm going to try to get, we can get through this to where David kills Goliath. So, okay. Stick with me. Now David was the son of a man named Jesse, an Ephraite from Bethlehem in the land of Judea. Jesse was an old man at the time, and he had 8 sons. So this is the history, okay? Jesse's 3 oldest had already joined Saul's army to fight with the Philistines, and David was the youngest son. David's 3 oldest brothers stayed with Saul's army, but David went back and forth so he could help his father with the sheep in Bethlehem. For 40 days, every morning and evening, the Philistine champion strutted in front of the Israelite army. There's another nugget. For 40 days. Oh, I love it so much. One day, Jesse said to David, "Take this basket of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread and carry them quickly to your brothers and give them 10 cuts of cheese to their captain. See how your brothers are getting along and bring back a report on how they're doing." David's brothers were with Saul and the Israelite army at the valley of Elah fighting against the Philistines. So David left the sheep with another shepherd and set out early the next morning with the gifts, as Jesse had directed him. He arrived at the camp just as the Israelite army was leaving for the battlefield with shouts and battle cries. Soon the Israelite and Philistine forces stood facing each other, army against army. David left his things with the keeper of supplies and hurried out to the ranks to greet his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, came out from the Philistine ranks. Then David heard him shout his usual taunt to the army of Israel. As soon as the Israelite army saw him, they began to run away in fright. "Have you seen the giant?" the men asked. "He comes out each day to defy Israel. The king has offered a huge reward to anyone who kills him. He will give the man of one of his daughters for a wife, and the man's entire family will be exempt from paying taxes." I don't think that's much. But back then, I'm sure it was. And David asked the soldier standing nearby, what will a man get for killing this Philistine and ending his defiance of Israel? Who is this pagan Philistine anyway, that he is allowed to defy the armies of the living God? And then these men gave David the same reply. They said, "Yes, that is the reward for killing him." But when David's older brother heard that David talking to the men, he was angry. "What are you doing around here anyway?" he demanded. "What about those few sheep you're supposed to be taking care of? I know about your pride and deceit. You just want to see the battle." "What have I done now?" David replied. "I was only asking a question." He walked over to some others and asked them the same thing and received the same answer. Then David's question was reported to King Saul, and the king sent for him. "Don't worry about this Philistine," David told Saul. "I'll go fight him." "Don't be ridiculous," Saul replied. "There's no way you can fight this Philistine, possibly win. You're only a boy, and he's been a man of war since his youth." But David persisted. "I've been taking care of my father's sheep and goats," he said. "When a lion or a bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from his mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. I have done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do it again to this pagan Philistine too, for he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine." Saul finally consented. "All right, go ahead," he said, "and may the Lord be with you." I can only imagine little David just like, "Yeah, like, okay, cool. Like, I'm going to go out there and do this, bet." Then Saul gave David his armor, a bronze helmet, and a coat of mail. David put it on, strapped the sword over it, and took a step or two to see what it felt like, for he had never worn such things before. "I can't go in these," he protested to Saul. "I'm not used to them." So David took them off again. He picked up 5 smooth stones from the stream and put them into his shepherd's bag. Then, armed only with his shepherd's staff and sling, he started across the valley to fight the Philistine. Goliath walked out towards David with his shield bearer ahead of him, sneering in contempt at his ruddy-faced boy. Am I a dog, he roared at David, that you come at me with a stick? And he cursed David by the names of his gods. Come over here, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and wild animals, Goliath yelled. David replied to the Philistine, You come to me with sword and spear and javelin, and I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today the Lord will conquer you, and I will kill you and cut off your head. And I will give you the dead bodies of your men to the birds and wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. And everyone assembled here will know that the Lord rescues his people, but not with sword and spear. This is the Lord's battle, and he will give you to us. As Goliath moved closer to attack David, David quickly ran out to meet him. Reaching into his shepherd's bag and taking out a stone, he hurled it with his sling and hit the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank in, and the Goliath stumbled and fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with only a sling and a stone, for he had no sword. Then David ran over and pulled Goliath's sword from his sheath David used to kill him and cut off his head. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah gave a great shout of triumph and rushed after the Philistines, chasing them as far as Gath and the gates of Ekron. The bodies of the dead and wounded Philistines were strewn all along the road for Shechem as far as Gath and Ekron. Then the Israelite army returned and plundered the desert of Philistines' camp. David took the Philistines' head to Jerusalem, but he stored the man's armor in his own tent. As Saul watched David go out to fight the Philistine, he asked Abner, the commander of his army, Abner, whose son is this young man? I really don't know, Abner declared. Well, find out who he is, the king told him. As soon as David's returned from killing Goliath, Abner brought him to Saul with the Philistine's head still in his hand. Tell me about your father, young man, Saul replied. And David replied, His name is Jesse, and we live in Bethlehem. So, oh, it's so good. It's so good. The confidence that David had because he knew God and that God had him and that this is God's war. This is God's battle. This is his triumph. This is such a powerful moment. And as many people talk about, David killing Goliath, and, you've heard so many renditions of it. But in the text, he's so confident because the Lord is with him. And it's such a testament. And as we continue in 1 Samuel, and you're going to have to continue this, okay, this week into 1 Samuel, because I'm not going to be able to get all the way through it. We'll go into 2 Samuel. There's a lot that's going to start happening because Saul becomes really jealous of David, but he wants him close. And, there was that agreement that if you killed, the Goliath, you could, have all these things and the kingdom with Saul and marry his daughter and all. So I want you to read that. But the most powerful thing is that God is not looking for the most impressive. He's looking for the most aligned with him. And it's not always based on looks, okay? It's not based on where you come from. And the thing is, you can look ready, right, on the outside, and it can look like, okay, this is the person, or this is, who we should follow and what we should do, but you're not ready on the inside, and you still make mistakes. And Saul had the position, but he didn't have the heart. And as I said all this last hour, heart and character is huge. David had heart. He believed. He had faith that God always had his back. He had the heart. Always. Even taking care of the sheep and being the shepherd boy. And that was his position. And I believe that God is still choosing people the same way. Even today. Even today. He's not looking for the most qualified, but he's looking for who's aligned with him and believes in him. And the thing is God is more concerned about who you're becoming than where it is that you're going, because he is going to lead your path. He is going to lead you. And that's right. The battle is the Lord's. Everything, leave everything to him. Don't abandon him like all his people have done for centuries. Don't abandon him. Just because things start to look really great, don't forget why they're great. I was reminded of that this weekend. That there can be a lot of distraction, and it's always good to humble yourself and to the Lord and to thank him for every single little thing, no matter what it is. And that is why David is who David is because of that. So this week, please finish 1 Samuel before we go into 2 Samuel next week, and be a David this week. Be a David this week. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here with me. And I hope you have the best week ever. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.